welcome to the Sidewalk CEO Podcast, a podcast for small business owners by small business owners. Each week, the Sidewalk CEO speaks with Frankfort area business owners about their journeys, sharing insights and firsthand experiences that can help fuel your path to success. Here are your hosts, Sherry Donahue, CEO and Chief Cybersecurity Evangelist of Commonwealth Sentinel Cybersecurity, and Leo Haggerty, founder of TCHQ Communications.
Well, this is the Sidewalk CEO Podcast, and I'm Leo Haggerty.
And I'm Sherry Donahue.
Thank you for joining us today. The Sidewalk CEO Podcast has been weeks and weeks of planning, and it's very exciting to have our first episode ready to go.
I am so excited, and what a great one to start with Rebecca Ruth Candy's.
And so what we're going to be doing on each episode of the Sidewalk CEO is we're going to be talking with entrepreneurs, business owners, business managers from the greater Franklin County area so that they can tell us a little bit about themselves and their journey, and maybe you can learn a little bit along the way if you're planning on opening a business.
And also maybe patronize some of these folks because we all need to
have more candy in our lives.
Have more candy, absolutely.
It's one of my rules to live by. I always say yes to candy.
One can't just live on bourbon alone.
That's true. Bourbon balls, maybe, but not just bourbon.
So, Sarah, we are going to talk with you about your family's business today. But before we get going, just wanted you to tell us a little bit about your background and, kind of how you got involved with the family business, and just start there.
Okay. Well, hi, everyone. I'm Sarah. With it being a family business that's been in my family since 1919, I basically grew up in it. I feel like some of my earliest memories involve the candy store. So it was going into the store after school, or when everyone else was on vacation, I was at the store doing my homework at the store. And this was before modern computers were a thing. So me and my brother would hop on the computer and just play with paint or play with the pinball game on the computer. But we spent a lot of time at the candy store, not necessarily in candy settings, but just around staff, around family.
So is being a kid and hanging out at a candy factory as cool as it sounds, or did you get sick of it after a while?
I would say I probably, not that I got sick of it, but on family vacations, when we did get to take those, my dad would always somehow work in a chocolate experience, and I would always get so upset, and I would be like, Dad, like, why are we doing this? We have chocolate at home. Like, why can't we just go do something normal? But I understand the value of it now. Like, I absolutely would do the exact same thing to my kids if I were to have kids. But yeah, it's as a kid, I wouldn't say I took it for granted, but I definitely just didn't understand, the why my dad was taking us on vacations, but forcing us to go to chocolate camps, which is, oh my gosh, just so horrible, right?
I'm having trouble feeling sorry for you right now.
And all of your friends at school wanted to come home and, see Willy Wonka and all of that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yes. And the first question I always get from anybody is, oh my gosh, is it like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory? And I always have to follow that up with, well, my dad's name is Charlie, so it is like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, but I don't have Oompa Loompas, but it is pretty cool.
Well, it could be your next big project. You talked about you're wrapping up some projects right now, so there you go.
We sure are.
Okay, so did you go to school with plans to go into the family business, or did that just kind of work out that way?
Well, I think I always had the idea of wanting to do something in the business realm. I just don't think I knew what I wanted that to be necessarily. And so I graduated from the University of Kentucky in 2020, and that was right in the middle of COVID. Towards the end of my semester, they sent everybody home and we finished online. So that would have been my normal, I suppose, job searching time, which was just totally shifted due to COVID and just the state of the world. So I was kind of looking at, I was on LinkedIn, I was looking at all these job postings and like for some reason, the idea of having to apply to jobs and interview just made me extremely nervous, because I had the realization of, oh my gosh, the only thing I know is small business, and for me to take these small business skills and apply it to like an international company or something on a much larger scale, I feel like I maybe would fall short, and I think the idea of that scared me a little bit. But the way it all happened, the way that I ended up actually at Rebecca Ruth, was during my senior year at UK. And this was when everything switched to online. We had this, our office manager, her name is Deanna. She's no longer at the candy company, but it's because during my senior year, she was very pregnant. And my dad was, he was talking to me and suggested, hey, you might want to just hang around the office, learn a few things just in case, you never know. It would just be nice to have someone else on hand that would know a few things. And on my first week of training in the office, I got a text from Deanna one day, and she said, hey, I'm not feeling very good. I'm just going to go to the doctor, make sure everything's okay with the baby. And I was like, okay, sure. And I texted her all day long. I was like, hey, how do you do this? Where is this form? How do I do this and this and this? And she was responding back to me, no problems at all. And later that day, she had called my dad. She said, hey, I just gave birth to a baby girl. So while I was kind of in the middle of dealing with the end of the semester, and then also kind of the idea of job searching but also training at the same time with the family business, I think it all worked out the way it was supposed to in that weird way. So
it sounds like she was very loyal to to her job and all that. Did she come back?
She actually did come back. So she was a stay-at-home mom for a few years, and then she actually came back, worked with us for a little bit more just to kind of help us out through the holidays, and then she ended up getting pregnant again. And then at that point, we're like, okay, I guess we'll let you go for real this time.
They know what causes that now, I think.
Yes, I think they do. But
chocolate, too much chocolate.
But yeah, so
that explains why I'm so fat.
Weird story, but that's kind of how I actually ended up working full time.
So what is your role now?
So officially, I am vice president of the candy company, which is
very impressive. Looks good
scary. but also very cool, very rewarding.
So how many family members are working for the company?
Yeah, we've got my dad, which is the president. So he's owned the business since 1997. And then we have my mom that's involved, and then my brother is also involved.
Okay.
And then there's me. So basically my entire immediate family is.
And who owned the business before your dad?
So my dad purchased it from his dad, John Booe, 1997. And so John Booe ran it from the 1960s, I believe, to 1997.
And before that?
And then before that was Ruth Hanley Booe, which is my great-grandmother. And she was the co-founder of Rebecca Ruth Candy.
So it truly has been a family business for many, many years.
Correct. Yes, since 1919.
So you've had your 100-year anniversary then already. Wow.
We have, yes.
That's amazing.
So in the early part of the 20th century, really well into the late 20th century, it was not normal for women to start a business and run it in their own right. How did Ruth and Rebecca get into the business?
So Ruth and Rebecca, they were both substitute school teachers as well as friends, and they made candy just kind of on the side for their friends, family during the holidays and whatnot. And in 1919, that's when they actually decided to start their business. And you're right, at the time, it was very uncommon for women to venture into business. And so they decided to name the company after their first names, which is where Rebecca Ruth comes from. So I think traditionally it would have been one not owned by a female, but it would have been something along the lines of Smith and Sons or something a little more paternal. But
so that was kind of a flex on their part to say, we're here, we're women, and you like our candy, so get over it.
Well, and I've seen a lot of older photos, and I've heard a lot of stories about Ruth and Rebecca, and that they were, I wouldn't say wild is the wrong word, but they, at the time of, horsebacks, they would ride the horses the normal way with their skirts on rather than side saddled, which was just like a big cultural no-no, I suppose, at the time. And then I also heard a story one time where they had taken a pickup truck and they would like plaster Rebecca Ruth on the side and just like park it in random places, or they would start up a conversation at like a silent film and say, "Oh, has anyone heard of that Rebecca Ruth Candy Company? I've heard they're really good." So they would, they were.
There are businesses in Frankfurt today who still do that. Will put a sign on the back of a truck and just leave it somewhere. So now we know where it came from.
So it was uncommon for women to start a business at this time, but I think Ruth and Rebecca were the perfect candidate for all of this. But they started at the Frankfurt Hotel, and this was during Prohibition. So the owner of the bar, his name was J.J. King, and he allowed Ruth and Rebecca to sell candy out of the bar, which was now closed due to Prohibition. And there were some rumors that started that Ruth and Rebecca were dipping nuts and fruits and whatnots in bourbon and then secretly selling those to customers.
Medicinally, purely medicinal, I'm sure.
Oh, wow.
But unfortunately, it was just a rumor. But people still came in, bought candy, left happy. So
tell us about Edna's Table.
Yes, so Edna's Table is a piece of marble that we salvaged from the fire at the old Capitol Hotel, which is where the present day Capitol City Museum is. So there's still a little section of that hotel
Neat.
left. Mm-hmm. And so it's called Edna's Table, and it was originally a part of the bar of that hotel. And it's a giant curved, beautiful piece of like a pinkish marble. But we call it Edna's Table because of one of our employees. Her name was Edna Robbins. She worked with us for 67 years, and then she retired on her 90th birthday.
Oh my goodness.
So we still use Edna's Table to this day. We've actually just moved it to our newest kind of project, which is going to be our new tourism center. And so we have built a nice table for that, and it's going to actually be the reception desk for our new guests.
Is that what we've been seeing being built over the last several years?
Yes.
Next to the location by the Capitol?
Correct. Right. Excellent. Next door. So that's almost open. So close to being open.
Oh,
so close. Yeah, I heard your dad talking about it recently and everything that you guys have had to go through, but it's going to be a great addition to the community and tourism.
Yes, I'm super excited for us to finally get to use that space and bring people through.
While we're talking about new projects, I understand your mom has a new old project.
That's right. Yeah. Yes. So Miss Risa's Restaurant is back. She started back in maybe, I want to say like 2010 or so, or early 2010s. And this was when I was back in middle school. So definitely before 2012. But she used to have a restaurant out on US 127 where she did soups and sandwiches. And then we opened up downtown in our 2nd Street Rebecca Ruth store for a few years, and then COVID happened and all that. But now we're back in a different Rebecca Ruth store. So this one is at our 629 Versailles Road location. And we've got soups, salads, sandwiches. Everybody loves the chicken salad. I also love the chicken salad. And then we've also got rotating Thai curries and other Asian-inspired dishes. So
fun. I had somebody who used to work for me who came in one day and had gotten a sandwich there and like, oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever had.
So how long has the restaurant been open?
Oh, I think we're on week 3 now.
Week 3.
It's very new, yes.
Gosh. Okay. So what are you open every day or?
So the hours for this at the moment are Monday through Saturday, 10 to 2:30.
Okay, so for lunch then.
And your other locations for Rebecca Ruth are open 7 days a week?
Yes. So we've got 3 total stores in Frankfurt. We've got 629 Versailles Road, which is more so in Frankfurt. And then we have 3295 Versailles Road, which is way out almost in Versailles.
On the other side of the interstate.
Yes. And then we've got our our main store factory location at 116 East 2nd Street, and all of those stores hold the same hours. It's 10 to 6 every day.
My wife and I have family spread literally all over North America, from Alaska to Florida. And every Christmas season, we have to drive around and go, oh, well, no, this is only on the other side of the interstate, so we got to go there to get that, and then we got to go, and so that's 90% of our Christmas shopping is done at Rebecca Ruth.
Oh boy. So you do have international, people come from all over the world to visit, is that right?
That's right. That is right. We get people from every continent, I'd say. Okay. And most recently, I just actually developed a new piece of candy. It's called the Bourbon Black Forest Truffle. So it's like a dark cherry, a dark chocolate cherry creamy truffle, and it's covered in dark chocolate as well. But I had someone from the Black Forest area of Germany who actually came, and she was like, this is delicious, and I'm taking some back to my friends and family in Germany.
That's wonderful.
So it's really cool to get to see people from all over the world. And then also it's really fun to see people picking up gifts for, work conferences or, just friends and family to take back to the other side of the world. So we had a gentleman come in and he bought a bunch of bourbon balls to give to some Japanese clients because he was going to Japan. So it's just little things like that are so cool to hear. And it's really, it's almost insane for me to realize the scope of Rebecca Ruth and how it is somewhat international, just
this has
just
been
from
part
our customers,
of your family for your whole life, and so you're right. It's everywhere. Everybody knows it's so quintessential. Frankfurt, Kentucky, and so it's just kind of a symbolic. And when you have one of those historic signs on the interstate that said this exit Rebecca Ruth, then you're big time, right? So when did you all get into the bourbon balls? Obviously not during Prohibition, despite the rumors.
Right.
So when did those come about?
So in 1936, Ruth, she went to the Frankfurt Sesquicentennial. So that was the Frankfurt celebration of being, I guess, the city of Frankfurt for 150 years at that point. And there was a guest there. Her name was Eleanor Hume Offutt. And she had stated that the two best tastes in the whole wide world was a shot of bourbon and then a piece of Miss Booe's candy. And so I guess at that point, the gears started turning in Ruth's head, and she figured out a way to make it work. And it took her 2 years or so, but in 1938 is when she invented the bourbon ball. And it's still her most popular piece of candy today. That's absolutely what we're best known for.
I was talking to a friend of mine earlier today, and I told him we were going to be interviewing you for the podcast. And he's like, so I have clients in Chicago, Pittsburgh, Washington, and Atlanta that I visit twice a year. Mm-hmm. And every time he goes, he comes to Frankfurt and loads up, because you can't take bottles of bourbon on an airplane.
That's right.
But you can take boxes of
bourbon
so
chocolates.
if he forgot once, and they were like,
"Where's my candy?
Where's my candy? Get out of here! I don't want to see you." So, yeah, it's very much like horse racing and bourbon. It's become a signature, not just of Frankfurt, but of the state.
Mm-hmm. So we were talking a little bit earlier about your busy time, and so you were saying it really starts at Christmas, right?
Mm-hmm. But there is a lot of prep work that goes into Christmas as well. Mm-hmm. So I would say we probably start prepping for Christmas, I would say, in July.
Really?
Or at least I like to try and get it done in July, because I'm not a procrastinator for the most part. There are some projects I procrastinate on, but having enough product for Christmas time is absolutely one of my biggest things is to make sure we've got the product to sell. So I like to prep early and try and get as much product made and try and take a look at previous year's sales and guesstimate what I think we might do for the upcoming Christmas, and then I'll work with my production manager and figure out how much we need to make by when, and then I just hope it all works out.
So during COVID, how much of a struggle was that to be able to ramp up for the busy season?
So COVID was an odd time. But that's when I officially stepped in, and I think I started basically about April is when I started, April 2020. So I guess I'm actually up here on about my 5 years now.
Wow.
But April 2020 is when I started, and it was a really weird time because the entire world shut down, and so you didn't have the foot traffic, and so foot traffic is a pretty important thing to us. So we were trying to figure out other ways that we could maybe try and monetize anything, just because we didn't want to have to lay anybody off. And fortunately enough, we did not do that. We kept all the stores staffed, even though there were probably some days that not a single person came in. But we kept all the stores staffed, all of our employees we kept. And we just used that time to ramp up our chocolate production. So we kept our factory running. We just didn't do tours, and we masked up. We did all the face shields and all of the things. But we used that time where we didn't get as much foot traffic to actually just build up our entire Christmas inventory. And I'm so glad that we did, because online sales that year were absolutely crazy. And I think that was just an effect of COVID. And we do have a lot of online sales during Christmas generally, but I would say the COVID year really, really, really surprised me, because there was a time that we actually ran out of bourbon balls, and I was like, oh my gosh, how did this happen? But
that was before you were vice president.
Yes,
that wouldn't have happened if you.
That was my first 6 months in, so I did my best.
So let me ask you a two-part question here. So you guys obviously you have a local base. And then you've got your national base, which is part tourism, part online. How do you market to the national base?
I would say it's mostly word of mouth, or as we get a lot of tourists that come through Kentucky, and so they find us through TripAdvisor, through word of mouth, just through Googling things to do in the area. And so we, I would say, get a lot of our national presence actually while they're here visiting locally. And then they take the candy back home, and then from there we'll order. Or we actually have a lot of customers, a lot of older clients that will call us every single year for Christmas. And it's funny because a lot of people don't do phone orders really anymore. You just go online. You're strictly online. You don't talk to anybody. You just go online, you order it, and it's at your house. We have so many customers that will still call us, and we'll help them place their orders every single year. But that phone call is much more than, hey, what can I get for you? Sure, we'll ship it out tomorrow. It's a, hey, how are you? I recognize your name. Like, how are you? And it ends up being a 30-minute phone call for all of these older clients who used to be who are from Kentucky, used to live in Kentucky, but have since moved. So we get so many people from California, Texas, Florida, New York, just literally all over the country that have some sort of tie to Frankfort and have been purchasing our candy for years, and then will call us for the holiday season. And
as we talk to different businesses through our business, Sherry's and mine, quality product is obviously a key, but customer service is really what keeps people coming back.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things I really try to highlight with our staff, is the customer experience, because without the customer, there is nothing. So, and I think it's special, and I'm really glad that we're based in Kentucky, because Southern hospitality is such a real thing. And so when you have a lot of people that are not from Kentucky visiting the state, they're like, wow, everyone is so nice here. And it just, to walk into a place and just automatically be treated with kindness, a smile, and a, hey, how are you today? Like, what brings you in? Wow, you're from Massachusetts? Like, what are you doing in Kentucky? Like, why are you even here right now? And just to be able to have that conversation with each customer that comes through the door, I think is really special. And that's what I really try to push onto our staff is the way the customer feels is absolutely the most important thing.
And you're representing, I mean, they may not go into a lot of different places while they're just coming through, and you're representative of that Southern hospitality. When I was in college, I went to Purdue, which is in Northern Indiana, and my roommate was from Chicago. And so she came home with me for Mother's Day. It must have been our first year. And we went out to, Mother's Day dinner with my parents and my brother. And the waitress comes over. She's talking to us and whatnot, And so when the waitress walks away, Mary says, "Do you know her?" I said, "No, why?" She goes, "She was talking to us like she knew you." And I'm like, "No, she's just being friendly." But she was just very like, that would never happen in Chicago.
Yeah.
So it is very much about that, and I think a lot of times now we've gotten to the point of everything, like you said, is online. You don't have that interaction with people. And so people forget, it's all about efficiency and get it done quick, quick. And even with people that do have that phone interaction with customers, they're, they have that efficiency of we have to, no more than 2 minutes per call. So the fact that you are having those conversations says a lot about the tradition of your business.
Yes, I'm very proud of our staff because all of them do so excellent in welcoming in the customer and making sure that they have the best experience possible.
How many employees do you have?
Total around 35 or so.
Wow.
Yeah.
Does that fluctuate seasonally, or is that pretty much standard?
It's pretty consistent. I'd say maybe anywhere from 30 to 35 or so. We've got a lot of students, for example, that'll work just during Christmas or summertime. And then we're really flexible with schedules. So we have people just pop in all the time. So
you probably don't have a lot of turnover with your employees, and they stay for a long time. I would
Edna. Say so. Yes. Like Edna, our 67-year employee.
So to go back to the other half of my other question, do you market differently to the locals, or is it pretty much the same that you're counting on the quality of the product and the quality of the customer service for word of mouth?
I definitely try and utilize Facebook a lot more with the locals. I've come to realize and understand that Frankfort, for example, is a Facebook town. So if it's not on Facebook, nobody knows about it. So I try to reach the locals that way. We do yard signs. I just started an Instagram actually. So I've been trying to keep the local population updated via social media.
And it surprises me the number of local people who aren't aware of what's going on in the community unless they see it on Facebook.
Right.
Because then it becomes real. But
yeah,
yay for Facebook.
What would we do without it?
Right.
So given that your degree, you have a business degree?
That's right.
Okay. And so you've been working in the business for 5 years. So seeing, having had the experience of growing up with it and now working in it as long as you have, how do you think that a business like this could fare if it were started now instead of in 1919?
Oh gosh, I have no idea. The candy business is a really odd business to be in. It's not very many people necessarily are in it, and I feel like you see a lot of mom and pop shops that are in the candy business. So I feel like you would have to still have that familial background when starting a kind of business like this. Like, for example, like Poppy's and Andy's, those are both family run, not candy businesses, but bakeries and any sort of handmade business like confections, I feel like really heavily would benefit from the familial aspect. And then, I don't know, I feel like in a lot of ways that we're actually lacking and we're still in the dinosaur age of things. I just got us this was back in 2020, but I finally got us off of the Yahoo website that my dad had built in 2006, and it converted us to to Shopify, for example. And so there's so many ways that we're technologically behind, and I don't think a business could start up today with the technology that we have and be competitive. I think our age is our advantage.
Right. So to that point, I have a cybersecurity company. So I know you do things, you have internet where people can order that way. Do you have any issues with, any kind of security breaches or protecting data or?
It's funny you asked that. I would say no, because everything we do is still pretty much on pen and paper.
Okay.
So I had met with one of those companies that do you can do inventory tracking and all of this stuff, and they were like, what kind of software are you using now? And I was like,
Mark One pencil?
Yes. Pen and paper? What do you mean? What are other people using? I don't know. So we are very technologically behind. So I wouldn't say that the security breaches really are a fear of mine at the moment. We write paper checks. We don't do
you don't do
ACH,
direct deposit,
anything like that.
Really?
So so we are very behind in that aspect. But also I kind of like that. I kind of like that it's not everything is totally accessible online. We still do paper files. So
okay.
There's advantages and disadvantages to that.
Of course,
but
right. I mean, you can't just easily, ask, I call it Sarah, because if I say the real name, then it will pick up, because sometimes when he says my name, it thinks it's saying the phone. But you can't just say, find, the last 6 months of orders and, graph it or whatever. But by the same token, you don't have to worry about somebody stealing it, or if, God forbid, a tornado came through,
right.
or a flood,
right.
or,
Yeah.
How did you guys do with the flood?
Surprisingly, we didn't really get affected too badly. So our property does back up to the Kentucky River, and the flood wall is, just a few feet away from our factory. And so that was scary. There was a point, the water had come up a lot, but it hadn't quite yet reached our flood wall. But then later, it was, I think, Sunday was Sunday morning, and the crust was supposed to be projected on Monday. So Sunday, the day before, everything was okay. The water hadn't touched the walls yet. And that was Sunday morning. Sunday afternoon, I walk by, and the water is now, 6 feet up on the wall. And I'm like, okay, maybe I should start to panic a little bit. Maybe I should start to maybe deal with this. And luckily, the water did not breach the flood wall. The only water we actually got was through a storm drain in our basement, and it did come up and flood our basement, maybe 4 feet or so. And that submerged our hot water heater and HVAC system. So we did have to get those replaced. But if at the end of the day, if that's the only damage we got, I'll take that, because it could have been a million times worse.
So obviously, being that, especially with the Second Street location, you're looking at over 100 years of possible flooding. You guys have been through the Spanish flu, the Great Depression, World War II, COVID, we said. So what kind of plans do you have in place to respond to something like that?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I feel like in our industry, it's I don't want to call it recession or depression proof, but it's a happy business. So I think that, as long as our customers are happy, things are relatively good in the world. We've got happy people coming through the door and then happy people leaving. I just hope that that's enough to get us through.
Do you work with the bourbon distilleries in the area, Buffalo Trace? And
we sure do.
Okay.
So our original Rebecca Ruth bourbon ball uses 100 proof Evan Williams, which is out of Heaven Hill Distillery in Bardstown. And then we do also do a single barrel bourbon ball for Heaven Hill as well. And then we also work with Buffalo Trace. We make the Buffalo Trace bourbon ball, and we do the Maker's Mark one, the Jim Beam one. And then we also started working with some smaller distilleries like Whiskey Thief here in Frankfort, and then also James E. Pepper in Lexington.
Wow.
So we do quite a few different bourbon balls.
So that's got to be, as far as the planning of it, my background, I'm an industrial engineer. And so the planning of, okay, you have to have so many of the Buffalo Trace, so many of the Heaven Hill, so many. So the planning for that, that's got to be kind of pretty intensive as far as making sure you always have enough of the particular ones.
Correct.
And how difficult is it to switch from one line to another?
So we only have one line.
Okay.
So it's actually a relatively efficient process with just the one line. The main piece of equipment would be called an extruder. So it's something that extrudes or forms the candy dough into the little pieces. And so we don't have to do any hand rolling, which is really nice. So the machine forms the piece, cuts the piece of candy, and we call it candy dough, and that's the cream center. And then it goes down the line, gets some chocolate on the bottom, and then gets some chocolate covered on top. And then there we hand decorate it. So for bourbon balls, we'll do pecans, and other candies we'll do sprinkles or sea salt or whatever it may be. And then we do hand pack it as well. So to actually run the line, it takes, we've got 2 people at the decoration station and then 2 people at the end packing. And then we have 1 line leader. So if we wanted a full day and we only had 5 people, we could make it work. And
how many pieces of candy can you produce in a day?
Thousands.
Wow.
Thousands. I wish I knew an exact figure, but I think one batch of the candy dough is roughly 60 pounds. And when you multiply that into maybe 30, we use the figure of 32 pieces per pound after it's been covered in chocolate and everything. So whatever 60 times 32 is times multiple batches.
She's the engineer. I have her do the math.
So as far as like your supplies, so you work with suppliers.
We do.
Are they based in Kentucky, or where are your suppliers mainly from?
We've got some in Kentucky. We try to work as locally as possible. We have a lot of our main suppliers in Ohio and other surrounding states.
So do the distilleries just pull up in a truck and drop off cases, or is it?
So we pick up the cases.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but we get them by the case or by like the drum. So we go through a lot of bourbon.
Well, so do we, but
or at least I do.
okay.
But yeah.
So if somebody was going to start a business up now here in Franklin County, what advice would you give them from your experience and your family's experience in business?
There's going to be long days. It's going to be hard. You're going to want to cry. I still cry sometimes, but at the end of the day, it's absolutely worth it. And just, to see the smile on my customers' faces when they enter and then when they leave is fantastic. And then to walk in and then have all of my staff there always happy. It's great. Just, we've got this, obviously we're a family run business, but I would feel like, I would say that our staff is also like an extended family of 35 members. So it's just,
it's a big family.
Yeah, it's a really big family, and some of the days are hard, but it does get easier. And I have, since I've been here for 5 years, have learned how to better efficiently just do everything. Like just when I first started, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. Some days I still don't know what I'm doing, but you get in there, and as long as you are headstrong, you'll figure it out.
Well, and that's the thing about it. For it to be a 106-year-old company, and you have 35 employees, and to be as internationally known and all that as you are, but you're still a small business because you have that small business mindset to where if you succeed or fail, it's your responsibility, and everybody's job is whatever it takes to get the job done at the end of the day. And so, I mean, it's one thing to make sure you have a good product, that you're marketing, that you have the sales, then you have your customer experience, and then you have your employees being happy. I mean, there's a lot to juggle when you are running a small business. You're in charge of all that, and you kind of got thrown in there at a young age, learning a lot. So what you talked about, you have some projects that you've been working on. What are some of the things that are coming down the line?
Yes. So I guess I'll start from 2020. Some of the major projects I would say I've completed was I got us onto Shopify, which was a really big step. We're still not quite there at the POS stage, but we'll hopefully get there one day. But I've just modernized a lot of our practices, and I would obviously, with a fresh set of eyes, I can come in and automatically point out this, and this. Like, why are we doing this? We could just be doing this instead. So there are a lot of things I've changed to, I think, make things a little more efficient and just make a little more sense. And, my dad, with it being his company for the past 20 years, I think he really hesitated to give me any sort of control, because change is hard for people. But, but I think everything has really worked out since implementing all these little changes. And then last summer, we actually redid our retail space at our 116 East 2nd Street store, which is our downtown store. And I think it's going to be really good. This is going to be our first summer actually using the complete space. So I'm really excited because to go with that updated retail space, we are almost about to open our new tourism expansion center, and it's a 5,000 square foot space that we have outfitted to be a new museum tour experience. It's got all kinds of old equipment in there. I found a bunch of vintage candy advertisements, and I've got a whole entire wall of those. We'll have a history video, and then I've got a room dedicated to the cultivation of cacao and how it was used by the Mayans, and just a little bit about the actual, chocolate itself and how it's made. And then you'll also be able to look into our factory and watch things happen, and I'll have monitors and all sorts of things. It's that's so neat. Close to being done. So close. That's
Do you have a date that you're hoping that'll be ready?
ASAP, like yesterday. No, but realistically, probably like mid-June.
Okay.
So we're really, really close to getting that space operational.
Okay. So, and then you have the restaurant.
Yes, and then we've got that Miss Reese's restaurant, and then just all the little things in between every day.
Do you perceive maybe opening up additional retail stores around the state, or just having your products sold in other stores?
So we do currently wholesale. So you can find our products in Lexington, Louisville, Bowling Green, Harrodsburg, and a lot of the other bigger cities. But as far as opening other retail stores go, I am absolutely open to the idea of that. I just think I want to really get this main 2nd Street store like absolutely perfect before I venture into opening up multiple stores. That would also require us to probably get a POS system, which we're not quite there yet. So yeah, we still use the good old fashioned punch in the number and then the category cash register. So, wow. But we do take credit cards.
That's good.
Yes.
That's excellent. Okay.
Yeah, we've got a lot of things planned for the future, but we'll just take it one step at a time. I'm really excited for this new tourism space to open, and then we'll be able to, just fly from there.
Well, I think it's great that, your dad had enough trust in you to, okay, these are changes. I mean, this is a 100-year-old company, but I'm letting her come in and make these changes. And so
please don't ruin it.
So
that's great.
I've got one more question.
Sure.
You had mentioned earlier that you invented your own piece of candy.
I did.
How often does that happen? I mean, with a company this old, are you always looking for something new, or were you just inspired and said, I'm going to do it and you're going to like it, Dad?
Well, I actually didn't even go to him with permission. I just said, hey, I made this new piece of candy. And he was like, okay. So that's where we're at now. The first few years he was really hesitant and was like, are you sure you want to do that? But these days I'm like, hey, I'm going to go do this. And he's like, okay.
Good.
So, no, as far as candy development goes, I would say we stick to our core candies for the most part. But there's some times where, we've just got extra ingredients on hand, or, there's some sort of trend or something happening. We haven't quite gotten on the Dubai bar trend yet, but my mom has experimented a little bit with it, and I will say they were delicious, but we're not quite there yet. But there's always something we could be doing.
What about, I guess, along the same lines of the prohibition?
Mm-hmm.
Now that medicinal marijuana is legal, and I'm assuming that recreational will be right behind it. Is that something that you all could see producing?
I have no idea. I would actually have to look at, so we are federally inspected, so by the FDA. So I'd actually have to figure out how difficult that would be if we wanted to go down that route.
Yeah.
How difficult it would be to actually implement that into our business, and how the FDA would handle it. And, it more so just the FDA side of things.
Right.
Sure, we could do it. I just don't know how.
Legally, it might be a completely separate store.
Yeah, it would probably have to be a completely separate building. But no, that's absolutely an avenue that is there. I just don't know if I, at the moment, am in that headspace, just because we've got so many other things happening right now.
There's only one.
Well, I think you've got a few years to worry about that in Kentucky.
Right. Okay.
Thanks again, Sarah. We really appreciate you being with us on the very first episode of The Sidewalk CEO.
I learned so much about Rebecca Ruth Candies. This is a wonderful company to have here in our community.
And all I really knew was it tasted good. So, we learned a lot. It's a great asset and some exciting stuff coming new for an over 100-year-old business.
Right. That's the key, to continue growing and innovating. And I think having young people like Sarah that can really extend that history and come up with new ideas.
So that'll do it for us. I'm Leo Haggerty from TCHQ Communications.
And I'm Sherry Donahue from Commonwealth Sentinel.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
You have been listening to the Sidewalk CEO podcast with Sherry Donahue of Commonwealth Sentinel Cybersecurity and Leo Haggerty of TCHQ Communications. You can learn more about the Sidewalk CEO on the web at thesidewalkceo.com and on social media. The Sidewalk CEO is recorded in the studios of TCHQ Communications in Frankfort, Kentucky. Check us out next week for the next episode of the Sidewalk CEO.